One damned glass of milk was all it took to silence the most dangerous room in Chicago. Roman Sterling wasn't just a businessman, he was the king of the city's criminal underworld, a man whose silence terrified grown men, but the only person he couldn't control was his own 7-year-old daughter, MIA. In 1 week, she had survived 5 nannies and thrown such a tantrum that it shut down an entire Michelin-starred restaurant. No one dared touch her, no one dared speak to her, until a trembling waitress with holes in her sneakers did the unthinkable. She didn't apologize, she didn't run, she looked the mafia boss in the eyes and ordered him to sit. What happened next didn't just change their lives, it unleashed a war. The fluorescent lamps of the 24-hour diner didn't buzz with the same irritating hum that had been the soundtrack of Sarah O'Connell's life for the last 3 years. It was 2 a.m, a Tuesday, night shift where the coffee wasn't fresh and the customers usually tried to forget where they came from or where they were going. Sarah wiped the laminated menus, her wrist ached, she looked at the clock. Still 4 hours. Still 4 hours and she could go home, sleep 3 hours, and then head to her second job at the laundromat. It was a cruel cycle, but when her grandmother's medical bills at St. Jude Hospital piled up on the kitchen table like paper skyscrapers, she had no choice. The doorbell rang, cutting through the silence. The atmosphere in the diner changed instantly. It wasn't just a customer, it was a shift in atmospheric pressure. First, 2 men in dark suits entered, scanning the room with predatory glances. They checked the corners, the swinging kitchen door, even the windows, then stepped aside. A man entered. He was tall, in a charcoal grey suit that probably cost more than the entire diner, dark hair slicked back, and eyes the color of cold steel. He was handsome in a crushing way. In the line of his jaw there was a sharpness that warned people to keep their distance, but the most terrifying thing about him wasn't the gun clearly bulging under his jacket. The most terrifying was the little 7-year-old girl holding his hand. She was dressed like a porcelain doll. Velvet dress, white tights, and shiny lacquered shoes, but her face was twisted in a grimace that could sour milk. "I don't want pancakes," the girl shrieked, her voice shattering the silence. "MIA," said the man, his voice deep and tired. "We'll eat and then go home." "No," she stomped her foot, the sound echoing on the linoleum. Both bodyguards flinched. Several other customers in the booths, a trucker and a tired nurse, immediately buried themselves in their food, fearing to look up. Everyone in Chicago knew Roman Sterling, knew the stories, knew that if you crossed his path, you disappeared. But apparently his daughter didn't care about his reputation. Roman sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. He looked like a man capable of closing a multimillion-dollar arms deal, but incapable of making a 7-year-old girl eat breakfast. He led her to a booth by the window. Sarah took a deep breath. It was her table. "Just do your job, Sarah. Don't look him in the eyes. Just take the order." She grabbed her notepad and approached the bodyguards, tensed at her approach, hands hovering near their belts. Sarah ignored them, stopping at the edge of the table. "Coffee?" she asked, her voice steady despite the wild pounding in her chest. Roman looked up for a second. He seemed surprised that she had even approached. Most people trembled. "Black, and chocolate milk for her." "I hate chocolate milk," she shrieked, grabbing the sugar shaker from the table and throwing it. Everything happened in slow motion. The heavy glass sugar shaker flew through the air and crashed against the wall inches from Sarah's head. The glass shattered, the sugar exploded in white powder, covering her faded uniform and hair. The entire diner fell into dead silence. A bodyguard stepped forward, looking at Roman, waiting for orders. Roman's face paled. He stood up, the chair screeching loudly. "MIA, stop." "I hate you," MIA screamed back, tears streaming down her face. "I want mommy." The mention of mother seemed to suck all the air out of the room. Roman's expression hardened. Pain flashed in his eyes, quickly replaced by cold fury. "Apologize to the waitress," Roman ordered, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "No," she crossed her arms, defying the man who ruled the city. Sarah stood there, shaking the sugar from her shoulder. She should be terrified. She should run to the manager, but she looked at the little girl and saw not a monster. She saw a lonely, angry child who was hurting. Sarah ignored Roman. She bypassed the bodyguards, went straight to the booth and slapped her palm on the table. Slap. The sound was sharp and loud. MIA jumped, eyes widening. Roman froze, hand halfway to his wallet. Sarah leaned in, nose to nose with the little mafia princess. "Do you know how hard it is to get sugar out of polyester?" Sarah asked, her voice low and serious. MIA blinked, stunned. No one had ever spoken to her like that. They either yelled or begged. "MIA stammered. "Very hard," Sarah continued, not taking her eyes off the girl. "And I have 4 hours left in my shift, and now you're going to sit down, drink the chocolate milk I'm about to bring you, and draw me a picture on this napkin to make up for the mess. If the drawing is good, maybe I'll forgive you. If it's bad, well, then I'll have to ask the cook to put broccoli in your pancakes." Roman's mouth opened. "You can't do that." "Try and see," Sarah said, arching an eyebrow. "I know the cook, he loves broccoli, puts it in everything, even ice cream." Mia looked at Sarah, then at her father, then back at Sarah. The tension in her small shoulders eased. A tiny curiosity sparked in her eyes. "Ice cream with broccoli is gross." "Gross," Sarah agreed. "So, deal?" "Chocolate milk and drawing." Mia hesitated, then slumped and nodded reluctantly. Sarah straightened up, clicked her pen, and looked at Roman, who stared at her as if she'd grown a second head. "And for you?" Sarah asked casually, as if he weren't the most dangerous man in the city. "Just coffee." Roman blinked, cleared his throat. "Yes, just coffee. Coming right up." As Sarah went to the kitchen, she felt his gaze boring into her back. She didn't know it yet, but she had just passed the most dangerous job interview of her life. The next 20 minutes were the quietest Roman Sterling had experienced in the last 6 months. He watched in disbelief as his daughter, the same one who had bitten her last nanny, sat quietly and drew a crooked cat on the napkin, sipping chocolate milk. He looked at the waitress. She was thin, too thin, the hem of her uniform frayed, and the dark circles under her eyes spoke of fatigue rooted deep in her bones. Her name tag said Sarah. "Daddy, look," Mia said, lifting the napkin. "Very pretty cat," Roman said absent-mindedly. When Sarah returned with the bill, Mia handed her the napkin. "Here." Sarah took it, examining it with the seriousness of an art critic. "Good whiskers. Okay, you're safe. No broccoli pancakes today." Mia actually giggled. It was a rusty, unusual sound, but it was real. Roman pulled out his money clip. He counted $500 bills and placed them on the table. Sarah looked at the money, then at him. "The bill is $12.50. "Keep the change," Roman said, standing and buttoning his jacket. "For the sugar." "I can't accept it," Sarah said firmly. "Tips go to the common, but I don't take charity." Roman froze in his world. Everyone took money, everyone had a price. "This isn't charity, it's payment for silence and for how you handled the situation." "I just talked to her like a person," Sarah said, tearing the bill from her pad. $12.50, keep your blood money." The bodyguards gasped. One of them, a huge man named Rocco, stepped forward. "Watch your tongue, girl." Roman raised his hand, stopping him. An intrigued smile touched his lips. "Blood money. Do you know who I am?" "I live in Chicago, Mr. Sterling. I'm poor, not stupid." Sarah put the bill on the table and walked away to serve the trucker at the counter. Roman watched her for a long time, then left a $20 bill respecting her request but still leaving more than due, and took his daughter's hand. As they left, Mia looked over her shoulder and waved at the waitress. Sarah waved back slightly. 2 days later, Sarah's world collapsed. She came home to her tiny for-sale apartment in the Loop and found an eviction notice taped to the door. Inside, her grandmother Martha coughed, a wet, raspy sound that chilled Sarah's blood. "I'm fine, honey," Martha croaked, sitting in her chair wrapped in 3 blankets. "Just a light cold." "It's not a cold, Grandma," Sarah said, holding back tears, checking the empty medicine bottles. "I need to extend your prescription. They said they won't give it until we pay the debt." "Don't worry about me," Martha said quietly. Sarah went into the bathroom and turned on the shower to drown out the sound of her crying. There was $70 in her bank account. Rent was 2 months late. Medical bills numbered in the thousands. She was drowning. When she came out, dried off, and put on her second-best outfit for the laundromat shift, there was a knock at the door. It wasn't the landlord. In the hallway stood Rocco, the giant bodyguard from the diner. He filled the entire doorframe. Sarah instinctively tried to slam the door, but Rocco blocked it with his massive hand. He didn't push, just held it firmly. "Miss O'Connell," Rocco said, his voice surprisingly polite. "Mr. Sterling requests your presence." "I didn't see anything," Sarah babbled, panic rising. "I didn't tell anyone about the diner. Please, I just want to go to work." "You're not in trouble," Rocco said. He reached into the inner pocket of his jacket. Sarah flinched, expecting a gun. Instead, he pulled out a thick cream-colored envelope sealed with red wax. "He wants to offer you a job." I have a job I have too. Not like this, Rocco said. Open it. With trembling hands, Sarah broke the seal. Inside was a sheet of thick cardstock in elegant font. It was printed. Position. Live-in governess. Client. Sterling family. Salary. $10,000 per week plus full medical insurance and housing. Sarah stopped breathing. $10,000 a week. That was more than she earned in a year. It would pay the medical bills in a month. It would save her grandmother. Is this a joke? She whispered. The boss doesn't joke, Rocco said. The car is downstairs if you refuse. We'll leave, and you'll never hear from us again. If you accept, your debts are paid this morning. Sarah looked back at her grandmother, dozing in the chair, trembling under the blankets. She looked at the eviction notice on the table. Then she realized she wasn't going to a job. She was selling her soul to the devil to save the only person she loved. Let me get my coat, Sarah said. The ride to the Sterling mansion passed in silence. The car was a black SUV with tinted windows and armored glass. They left the city toward the wealthy enclave of Black Forest, where houses hid behind tall wrought iron gates and surveillance cameras. They arrived at massive forged gates that opened slowly with a creak. The driveway led through leather gardens until the mansion appeared. It looked like a fortress. Grey stone, tall towers, and guards patrolling the perimeter with automatic rifles. Rocco opened the door for her. The boss is in the library. Don't touch anything. Sarah passed through the massive oak doors. The foyer was larger than her entire apartment building. A crystal chandelier hung from the ceiling, and the floor was marble so polished she saw her reflection. Her cheap coat and worn shoes looked painfully out of place. The butler led her down a long hallway lined with oil portraits of stern ancestors. He opened the double doors. Mr. Sterling, Miss O'Connell has arrived. The library smelled of old paper, whiskey, and tobacco. Roman Sterling stood by the fireplace with a glass of amber liquid in hand. He looked different from the diner. More imposing, more dangerous. He turned to her. You came. $10,000 a week is a pretty convincing argument, Sarah said, keeping her chin high. It's a bonus for the risk, Roman replied dryly. My daughter has gone through 4 governesses in the last month. One left in tears, one with a broken nose, one is suing me now. And you think I can handle her because I once made her drink chocolate milk? I think you can handle her because you don't fear me, Roman said, approaching. People don't respect those who fear, and fear is smelled like blood to a shark. You don't smell like fear, Sarah. I'm terrified, Sarah admitted honestly. Good bravery isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite it. He placed the contract on the table. Sign. Your grandmother's hospital bills have already been transferred to my personal account. They're fully paid. Sarah's eyes widened. You already paid them? I made inquiries. I know what you need. I know you're drowning, Sarah. I'm offering you a lifeline. His eyes darkened. But understand one thing. Once you sign this paper, you live under my roof, you follow my rules, and the main rule is you protect MIA with your life. Sarah looked at the contract. She thought of the little girl with sad eyes in the diner. She thought of her grandmother who for the first time in years could breathe freely. She took the pen. Where do I sign? Barely had the ink touched the paper when the library doors burst open. A woman entered. She was tall, blonde, and stunningly beautiful in a red dress that looked painted directly on her. Her eyes were sharp, scanning Sarah with instant disdain. It was Vanessa Caldwell, Roman's sister-in-law, his late wife's sister. Is this the new servant? Vanessa snorted, looking Sarah up and down as if she were trash stuck to her shoe. Roman, seriously, she looks like she crawled out of a dumpster. Roman's jaw tensed. Vanessa, this is Sarah. She's MIA's new governess. Vanessa laughed a cold, brittle laugh. She won't last a night, miss. Will eat her alive. And if not, the little. Vanessa stepped toward Sarah, her voice dropping to a poisonous whisper only Sarah heard. Then I will. Sarah didn't flinch. She didn't look away. She looked straight into Vanessa's eyes. Nice to meet you, Sarah said sweetly. I like your dress. It almost distracts from your character. Roman stifled a sound that might be laughter. Vanessa's face reddened with fury. Sarah turned back to Roman. When do I start? Roman shifted his gaze from the furious Vanessa to the bold waitress. Sparks of something dangerous and possessive ignited in his eyes. Right now, Roman said. Welcome to the family. Try not to die. On her first night in the Sterling mansion, Sarah didn't sleep. Her room was larger than her entire apartment, with a bed like a cloud and silk sheets that probably cost more than her kidneys. But the house's silence was heavy. It wasn't peaceful silence. It was breath-holding silence, waiting for the inevitable. At 6 in the morning, Sarah was up. She put on the uniform Vanessa left her. A stiff grey suit with a skirt that chafed her neck. She looked in the mirror and didn't recognize herself. She looked like a servant. She was a servant. Tying her hair, she remembered Roman's words. MIA smells fear. She wouldn't be a servant. She would be an ally. Sarah descended decisively to the kitchen. It was an industrial space gleaming with stainless steel. The chef, a man named Henri who seemed to measure joy in micrograms, with terrifying speed. "Sorry," Sarah said. Henri didn't look up. "Breakfast for staff is at 7. Toast, oatmeal wait in the hallway." "I didn't come for toast," Sarah said, passing him to the pantry. "I came for MIA. She likes eggs." "Miss doesn't eat breakfast," he snorted. "She throws breakfast." "That's because you probably serve her something weird like quail egg park and asparagus," Sarah murmured, grabbing a loaf of white bread and a chunk of cheddar cheese. "Where's the butter?" Henri stopped chopping. He turned, knife in hand, offended look. "What are you doing in my kitchen?" "Making a hot cheese sandwich," Sarah said, lighting the stove. "The kind that drips, that gets your hands dirty, the kind a 7-year-old actually eats." By the time MIA wandered into the dining room an hour later, the smell of melted butter and toasted bread filled the air. MIA dragged her headless doll, her face twisted in her usual morning grimace. Vanessa was already at the table sipping black coffee or browsing her phone. Roman was at the head reading a folder marked confidential. The tension was palpable. "I'm not hungry," MIA announced, climbing onto the table. "Excellent," Sarah said, entering with a plate. She placed the golden, perfectly crispy hot cheese sandwich in front of Roman, not MIA. "Because I made this for your dad." Roman looked up surprised. "For me?" "Yes, it's a special recipe, very spicy, definitely not for kids," Sarah lied smoothly. "Kids can't handle such extreme cheese." MIA narrowed her eyes. She looked at the sandwich with cheese oozing from the sides. It looked amazing. "I can handle spicy," she challenged. "I don't know," Sarah said thoughtfully, tapping her chin. "It's pretty dangerous. You might cry." "I want it." MIA grabbed the plate before Roman could touch it. She bit off a huge piece. Her eyes widened. Of course, there was nothing spicy. It was just delicious. She chewed, swallowed, and immediately bit off another piece. For the first time in months, Roman watched his daughter eat a full portion without a single scream. He looked at Sarah over his folder. The corner of his mouth twitched in a ghost smile. "You're manipulative," Roman murmured as Sarah poured him coffee. "I'm resourceful," Sarah corrected in a whisper. "There's a difference." "This is ridiculous," Vanessa snapped, slamming her phone on the table. "Cheese sandwich for breakfast? What about her blood sugar, Roman? You see, this woman is incompetent. She treats your daughter like a commoner." MIA stopped chewing. She looked at her aunt, her little face darkening. "It's delicious," MIA said aggressively. "It's fat," Vanessa countered. "Sarah, remove this trash and bring Miss a fruit cut." Sarah froze. It was a test. Vanessa was marking territory. If Sarah obeyed, she would lose MIA's respect forever. If she resisted, she might be fired. She looked at Vanessa, then at MIA, and took the salt. "Actually," Sarah said calmly, "I think the sandwich needs a little salt." She sprinkled a pinch on MIA's plate, completely ignoring Vanessa's order. "There, perfect. Want juice?" The silence that followed was deafening. The servants against the wall held their breath. Vanessa's face covered in red spots. She looked at Roman, expecting him to fire the bold waitress. Roman sipped his coffee slowly, set down the cup. "Vanessa," Roman said, emotionless, "if MIA likes the sandwich, she eats sandwich. If Sarah says it needs salt, it needs salt." Vanessa gasped. She stood so abruptly her chair toppled. "Perfect if you want to raise her like a savage, please, but don't come crying to me when she's uncontrollable on Friday." She stormed out of the room, her heels sounding like gunshots on the marble. MIA looked at Sarah with a new expression. It wasn't trust yet, not yet, but it was interest. "Is Friday's gala fun?" Sarah asked, easing the tension. "No," MIA and Roman said in unison. Roman checked his watch. He approached Sarah. He was so close she could smell his cologne. "Sandalwood and cold rain." He lowered his voice so MIA wouldn't hear. "That was a dangerous move," he said. Vanessa has influence on the board of directors. She can turn your life into hell. My life was already hell, Mr. Sterling, Sarah replied, meeting his steel-grey gaze. I survived an eviction notice, and a manager who stole my tips. A woman in a red dress doesn't scare me. Roman studied her face. His gaze slid to her lips for a fraction of a second and then back to her eyes. Make sure you're ready for Friday's gala. It's a nightmare from a security standpoint, but we must appear. Don't take your eyes off her. I won't. And Sarah, make me one of those sandwiches tomorrow. He turned and left, followed by Rocco. Sarah exhaled. She hadn't even noticed she was holding her breath. She looked at MIA, licking her greasy fingers. Okay, Sarah said. What is a gala and why do we hate it? MIA didn't look up. Her expression was, it's when people pinch my cheeks, lie to Dad, and I have to wear a dress that itches. Well, Sarah said, taking a napkin, let's change the rules. If it itches, we don't wear it. Friday arrived with the delicacy of a hurricane. The Sterling mansion transformed into a fortress of high fashion and high security. The annual Chicago Children's Fun Gala was held on the mansion grounds, meaning 300 of the city's richest sharks descended on Roman's house. Sarah was in MIA's room discussing the evening's terms. I won't wear the pink, MIA declared from the depths of her closet. Good, Sarah said, sitting on the floor. What if we wear the blue, but you can wear your high sneakers underneath? No one will see them under the long skirt. MIA poked her head out. Shiny sneakers? MIA considered it. Getting her ready was easy. It was harder for Sarah herself. She had nothing to wear. She assumed she'd go in uniform, but an hour earlier, Rocco appeared at her door with a garment bag. The boss said, no uniform today. You must blend in with the crowd. Visible but invisible security. Sarah unzipped the bag. It wasn't maid's clothing. It was a midnight blue silk evening dress that flowed like water. It was modest but stunning, cut not to restrict movement, cut for someone who might have to run. When Sarah descended the main staircase an hour later, the noise in the ballroom seemed to fade. She had no jewelry, no professional makeup, but the dress fit like a second skin, highlighting the strength of her shoulders and the grace of her walk. Roman was at the foot of the stairs talking to a senator. He stopped midword. His gaze followed Sarah as she descended, and a flash of undisguised desire replaced his usually contained expression. Who is that? The senator asked. My daughter's governess, Roman said, his voice tenser than normal. Sarah reached the bottom step. She felt exposed despite the high neckline. Is this okay? I feel like I'm playing dress-up. You look. Roman cleared his throat, regaining composure. You blend well with the crowd. Stay close to Amaya. Keep her away from the terrace door. The security net is weakest there. Understood. The evening was a whirlwind of fake smiles and expensive champagne. Sarah moved through the crowd like a ghost, her eyes constantly scanning. She didn't drink, didn't chat, she worked. She noticed Vanessa reigning in a dazzling and lethal emerald green group. Vanessa saw Sarah and whispered something to a group of socialites who turned and laughed. Sarah ignored them. She watched a waiter. He was a tall man with thin mustache carrying a tray of appetizers. Waiters don't sweat like that, Sarah thought, not in an air-conditioned room. And he wasn't serving. He was circling the perimeter, getting closer and closer to where MIA played with a group of other children near an ice sculpture. Sarah's instincts, honed by years watching drunks and thieves in 24-hour diners, screamed danger. She moved forward. Sarah, where are you going? Roman asked, blocking her path. That waiter, Sarah whispered, alarmed, the one with the mustache. Who is he? Roman glanced that way. I don't know him. The service staff was vetted. He's not serving, Sarah said, pushing past Roman. He's hunting. At that moment, the ballroom lights went out. Darkness engulfed the hall. Screams rang out. The heavy sound of breaking glass echoed. MIA, Roman roared, his voice cutting through the panic. Sarah didn't scream. She ran. She remembered the hall's layout. She knew exactly where the ice sculpture was. She ran through the darkness, pushing guests, ignoring the chaos. A flashlight beam cut the darkness, not from a phone but a tactical flashlight attached to a gun barrel. It swept the crowd and stopped on MIA, frozen in terror. The waiter was there. He no longer held a tray. He held a silenced pistol. Goodbye, princess, the man hissed. He raised the pistol. He didn't see Sarah. She had no weapon, no training, but she had momentum and a heavy silver tray she grabbed from a table while running. The moment the man pulled the trigger, Sarah lunged at him. She swung the tray with all the force of 3 years of repressed rage and fear. Bam! The silver tray hit the killer's head with the sound of a church bell. The shot veered off, shattering the ice sculpture into a million diamonds. The man grunted, staggered but didn't fall. He was strong. He backhanded Sarah across the face, throwing her against a table. Sarah's mouth filled with the taste of blood. She looked up. Dazed, she saw the black hole of the barrel. She braced for the end. Bah! Bah! 2 deafening shots rang out. The killer's chest exploded in red. He collapsed like a felled tree. Behind him, in the flickering light of the emergency lamps, stood Roman Sterling, smoking pistol in hand, face a mask of pure, undisguised violence. The emergency lighting came on full. The hall was silent, broken only by sobs of terrified guests. Roman didn't look at the dead man. He lunged forward, kneeling beside Sarah. Sarah, he grabbed her shoulders. Where are you hurt? Talk to me. Sarah touched her lip. It was split, blood dripping on the blue dress. I'm fine, I'm fine. She jumped up, ignoring the dizziness. Where's MIA? MIA crawled out from under the table. She trembled, eyes wide with shock. She looked at the dead man, then her father, then Sarah. She ran not to Roman, she ran to Sarah. MIA buried her face in Sarah's silk dress, sobbing uncontrollably. Sarah hugged the girl, closing her eyes from the bloody scene, rocking her back and forth. I'm with you, Sarah whispered, stroking her hair. I'm with you. He can't hurt you anymore. Roman watched them. He saw the blood on Sarah's face, blood she shed for his daughter. He saw MIA clinging to her. He saw the dented silver tray on the floor. Rocco and the security team filled the hall, blocking exits. Boss, Rocco said, panting, we found a breach at the west gate. It was a coordinated attack. We need to move to the shelter. Roman nodded but didn't move yet. He reached out and touched Sarah's cheek, wiping a streak of blood with his thumb. His hand trembled slightly from fear, from realizing how close he had been to losing everything. You saved her, Roman whispered, his voice hoarse. It's my job, Sarah said, her voice trembling. No, Roman said, helping her up, one arm possessively around her waist, the other holding the pistol. It wasn't a job, it was family. He turned to his people, eyes cold as ice. Find out who sent him, Roman ordered, his voice echoing in the hushed ballroom. Burn the city to the ground if necessary, but find them. No one touches what's mine. And when he said that, he didn't look at the mansion or his fortune. He looked at Sarah. The shelter wasn't a home. It was a fortress disguised as a log cabin hidden deep in the dense forests of northern Wisconsin, a 3-hour drive from Chicago's chaos. The windows were reinforced polycarbonate, the walls under the wood siding lined with steel sheets, and the perimeter had silent alarms. Roman parked the black SUV in the hidden garage and the engine finally shut off. We are here, Roman said hoarsely. Sarah unbuckled her seatbelt. The adrenaline receded, replaced by a pulsing pain in her cheek and deep bone fatigue. MIA curled up in the backseat, squeezing Sarah's hand so tight her knuckles whitened. I'll carry her, Roman said. He opened the back door and carefully lifted his daughter. MIA stirred but didn't wake, burying her face in his shoulder. Inside, the cabin was cold. Roman laid MIA in a bedroom that looked always ready for them. Clean sheets, a small night lamp, and heavy blackout curtains. Sarah stood in the main living room hugging herself. The midnight blue dress was ruined, stained with blood and dirt. She shivered, not from cold. She hit a man. She saw a man die. Roman came out of MIA's room. He passed the kitchen straight to a wall panel, keyed in a code. The fireplace ignited automatically with a gas hiss, casting warm orange light into the room. He turned to Sarah. He no longer looked like a mafia don. He looked like a man who had seen too much. Sit, he ordered softly, pointing to the leather sofa. I need to see your face. Sarah Saturday. Roman returned with a first aid kit. He sat on the coffee table in front of her, his knees touching hers. He wet a cotton pad with antiseptic. It will sting. It's been worse, Sarah whispered. No, Roman said, his eyes meeting hers. It hasn't. You should never have been in that situation. Sarah, I failed you. You didn't fail me, you saved me. You saved us. Roman dabbed the cut on her lip. Sarah hissed in pain. His hand froze, hovering on her face. His fingers were rough, calloused from life, but his touch was incredibly gentle. Why? You could have run. Most people run. She's just a child. Roman, I know what it's like to be scared and alone. Sarah lowered her gaze to her hands. When I was 7, My father left Mom wasn't around. I spent a lot of time hiding under tables hoping no one would find me. I saw MIA under that table and just ran. Roman looked at her, and a deep change was happening behind his steel grey eyes. He wasn't seeing her as an employee, he was seeing her as an equal. You're extraordinary, Sarah. The air between them became heavy, charged with electricity. Roman leaned slightly forward, his gaze dropping to her lips. Her breath caught. She didn't pull away. Daddy. The voice broke the spell. Roman and Sarah pulled apart. MIA stood in the doorway rubbing her eyes, hugging her headless doll. I had a bad dream there was a bad man there. Roman stood instantly. The bad man is gone. Daughter, he can never hurt you again. Can Sarah sleep in my room? MIA asked softly. I don't want to be alone. Roman looked at Sarah. It was a protocol violation. Servants didn't sleep with the family. But the mansion rules didn't apply in the woods. If Sarah doesn't mind, Roman said. I don't mind, Sarah said softly. She stood, legs unsteady. Come on, Bug, let's sleep. That night, Sarah lay on top of the comforter on the single bed next to MIA. She listened to the wind howling outside. For the first time in her life, she wasn't thinking about rent or bills. She was thinking about the man in the next room and that she was willing to die for this family she had known only a week. The next morning was surreal in its normality. Roman was chopping wood outside, an activity Sarah found distractingly attractive. He had traded his suit for jeans and a flannel shirt, and the physical labor seemed to burn his rage. Inside, Sarah found pancake mix in the pantry. By the time Roman returned shaking snow from his boots, the cabin smelled of maple syrup and bacon. MIA was at the counter laughing for real, flour on her nose. Daddy, Sarah taught me to flip them. Roman stopped in the doorway. He looked at the scene, and the domestic warmth hit him like a physical blow. It was the life he couldn't have, the life he was deprived of when his wife died. True, Roman said, hanging his jacket. And how many fell on the floor? Only 2, Sarah said, flipping a pancake with professional mastery. But the 5-second rule applies in the woods, I suppose. In Wisconsin, it's the 10-second rule, Roman said, approaching. He stole a piece of crispy bacon from the plate. This is for the cook. Sarah smacked his hand with the spatula. Roman laughed, a deep, genuine laugh that transformed his face, taking off 10 years. MIA looked at him amazed. She hadn't heard his laugh in years. For a few hours, they weren't a fugitive mafia royal family and their hired employee. They were just a family having breakfast. But the outside world kept spinning, and it spun against them. Roman's satellite phone vibrated insistently. The laughter stopped instantly. He picked up the phone. Speak. It was Rocco. Boss, Rocco's voice was low and anxious. We found the money trail, you won't like it. Roman's face hardened, the mask returned. Say it. MIA watched him, spatula frozen in hand. She saw the light leave his eyes, replaced by the Don's cold, dead gaze. It's family, Roman said into the phone, his voice dropping to a whisper more terrifying than a shout. Understood, take care of it. He hung up. He looked at Sarah, the morning warmth vanished. Pack your things, Roman said. We are not safe here. Meanwhile, in Chicago, in the damp, isolated basement of an abandoned meat processing plant, Rocco wiped his bloody knuckles with a rag. Tied to a chair in the center of the room was the coordinator. The first hour he was stubborn, but everyone talks eventually. Repeat it again, Rocco growled. I didn't know, the man sobbed, his face swollen. She just asked for the seating chart, said she wanted to surprise her brother-in-law. Who? Rocco demanded. Vanessa Caldwell. Rocco sighed. He suspected it, but hated being right. Vanessa, sister of Roman's late wife. She always envied Roman's power, always resentful that the inheritance was left to MIA. She hired a killer to kill a 7-year-old girl. It was a special kind of evil. She paid the catering to let the shooter through. The man sobbed. She transferred the money from an offshore account. Rocco pulled out his phone. He had already called Roman, but he needed to find Vanessa before she realized the attempt failed. He dialed a contact at the bank. Trace the transfer. Where did the funds originally come from? Vanessa doesn't have that kind of funds. A moment of silence on the line, then the voice on the other end said, the funds came from a shell company in Jersey. Cross Holdings. Rocco froze. Victor Cross, head of the rival criminal clan on the East Coast, Roman's mortal enemy. If Vanessa was working with Cross, It wasn't just an attempt, it was a takeover. "Boss," Rocco whispered to himself. "This is war." In the cabin, the atmosphere was feverish. Sarah stuffed clothes into a sports bag. "Who was it?" Sarah asked as Roman inserted a fresh magazine into his pistol. "Vanessa," Roman said. He didn't look at her, he couldn't. The shame of his own family's betrayal carved a hole inside him. "Your sister-in-law?" Sarah gasped. "But she lives in the house, she eats at your table. And she sold us to Victor Cross." Roman racked the pistol slide. "She wants the mansion, Cross wants the territory, they made a deal. MIA is the only heir if she's gone. Vanessa gets everything." Sarah finished, feeling sick. "Daddy, I can't find Mr. Sardik," MIA shouted from the bedroom. "Mr. Sardik was the headless doll." "Leave it, daughter," Roman snapped, his tension spilling out. "We need to go." "No," MIA screamed, diving under the bed. "I need him." Sarah ran to the room. "MIA, we need to go." She reached under the bed and grabbed the doll. As she pulled it out, her hand touched the doll's back. It was hard, lumpy. Sarah froze. She flipped the doll. The seam on the back was new, crude. Slowly, Sarah said, "MIA, did anyone play with Sardik?" "Yes." MIA sniffled. "Auntie fixed him last week, said she put his heart back in." Sarah's blood ran cold. She tore the doll seam. Inside the stuffing wasn't a heart, it was a black plastic disc the size of a coin blinking with a slow red light. A GPS tracker. "Roman!" Sarah screamed. Roman burst into the room. Sarah held up the doll and the blinking device. "She didn't just sell information," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "She was tracking us, she knows exactly where we are." Roman stared at the device. The red light blinked faster. Beep, beep, beep. Roman grabbed the device and crushed it with his boot. "Down." He knocked Sarah and MIA down, covering them with his body just as the cabin's front window shattered. Bah! A bullet from a powerful sniper rifle pierced the glass and entered the wall exactly where Sarah had been a second before. "They're here," Roman growled. He dragged them to the hallway away from the windows. Outside, engines roared. Not one car, several. Tires crunched on gravel, doors slammed. "How many?" Sarah asked, hugging MIA. Roman peeked through a slit in the blinds. 6, heavily armed Cross's elite squad. He looked at Sarah. He extended a small revolver from his ankle holster. "Know how to use it." "Point and shoot," Sarah said, her hand shaking so much the gun vibrated. "Something like that. Take MIA to the safe room in the basement. Lock the door. Don't open until you hear my voice. If anyone else tries to enter." "I shoot," Sarah said, gripping the cold steel. "Shoot until the bullets run out," Roman ordered. He kissed her forehead, then grabbed Sarah's nape and pressed his forehead to hers. "I'll buy you time, run." "Roman, don't die." "I have a date with a fried cheese sandwich," he said with a grim smile. "I won't miss it." He turned and kicked open the front door, firing 2 shots into the snow. "Come on, bastards." Sarah didn't look back. She grabbed MIA and ran to the basement door. As she locked the heavy steel bolts behind them, upstairs automatic bursts thundered, shaking the house's very walls. War had come to the forest, and Sarah was the last line of defense. The silence in the safe room was heavier than the gunfire sounds above. The roar of engines and the crackle of automatic fire faded. Sarah looked at MIA curled in the corner, hugging her headless doll. "Stay here," Sarah whispered, her heart pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird. "Count to 1,000, don't stop." "No," MIA whimpered. "I need to check on your dad." Sarah kissed MIA's crown, unlocked the heavy steel door, and crept up the basement stairs. The living room had become a battlefield. The beautiful wood walls were splintered, glass covered every inch of the floor, the air thick with gunpowder smell. Sarah stepped over the body of one of Cross's men. She gripped the revolver Roman gave her in her sweaty palms. She saw him. Roman was leaned against the kitchen island, pressing his side. Blood seeped through his fingers, staining his flannel shirt black. Above him stood the Liquidator's commander, a huge man with a scar across his entire face. His pistol pointed straight at Roman's forehead. Roman had run out of bullets. He looked up at his executioner, his gaze defiant. He didn't beg. "Come on," Roman spat. The killer grinned. "With pleasure." "Hey!" The shout escaped Sarah's throat before she could think. The killer turned, surprised to see a woman in a dirty dress standing amid the rubble. Sarah didn't hesitate. She didn't think about the moral side. She didn't think about her past life as a waitress. She thought about the man on the floor and the little girl in the basement. She raised the heavy revolver with both hands, aimed at the man's chest center, and pulled the trigger. Bah! The recoil nearly dislocated her shoulder. The bullet veered, hitting the killer in the shoulder. He staggered back, roaring in pain, dropping his weapon. That was all Roman needed. Despite his wound, Roman lunged forward with the ferocity of a wounded lion. He tackled the man, stabbing the killer's hidden knife into his neck. It was all over in seconds. The man went limp. Roman collapsed back on the floor, gasping for air. Sarah dropped the pistol. She fell to her knees beside him, her hands hovering over his wound. Roman, oh God, Roman. He looked at her, face pale but eyes burning with an intensity that scared and fascinated her at once. He raised his hand. His bloody palm rested on her cheek. You missed, he croaked, and a slight smile touched his lips. I hit his shoulder, Sarah sobbed, laughing through tears. Close enough, Roman whispered. He pulled her to him, kissing her fiercely with the taste of blood and survival. You broke a direct order. I quit, Sarah whispered on his lips. Request denied, Roman murmured as the sound of sirens and Rocco's shouts finally came from afar. I think the position we are looking for is mother. The solemn opening of the St. Jude Children's Hospital wing became the event of the season. The press arrived in crowds, clicking cameras at the happy couple. Roman Sterling stood tall, fully recovered, his arm possessively around Sarah's waist. On her a dress that cost more than the diner where she once worked, but she wore it with a queen's confidence. Next to them stood MIA. She didn't frown, held a bouquet of flowers and smiled at the cameras. And what about Vanessa Caldwell? A reporter shouted. Any comments on her sentence? Roman's face turned icy. We don't pronounce ghost names. Vanessa was in a federal maximum security prison serving 3 life sentences thanks to one waitress's testimony. MIA pulled Sarah's hand. Mom, can we buy ice cream after this? Sarah looked at the girl who once threw a sugar shaker at her head. Only if it's with broccoli. MIA giggled. You, gross. Roman looked at Sarah, and the look in his eyes told the world everything it needed to know. The mafia boss no longer ruled the city, the waitress did. And this is the story of how a damned glass of milk and a brave heart brought Chicago's most powerful man to his knees. Sarah didn't just survive in the organized crime world, she conquered it not with violence but with the one thing Roman Sterling couldn't buy: sincere love and courage. This proves that sometimes the strongest person in the room isn't the one holding the gun, it's the one willing to stand in front of it for those they love. And you? If you were Sarah, would you accept the job knowing the danger or stay in the diner? Write me in the comments, I read every one. If you like this story, please press the like button, it really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and press the bell icon.